presentation, I have prepared just a little bit of an outline of the topics that I will cover today. So Colorado exclusive right to sell listing contract and the amend extend to that. We'll go through filling in the blanks or using the NA automatic fill in for the non-applicable if it does not pertain to your particular situation. I'll go through an explanation of how to fill it out based on my experience in classes that I've taken. I will also be showing you how I've used clauses provided in the software program for RE Colorado or CTME or IRIS. And those clauses have been purchased by Radius Agent and provided by Frascona, Joyner, Goodman, and Greenstein, attorneys at law. So I will show you how I've actually added those into the contract. So for example, the one that I've used today will be the variable or reduced commission if only one broker on a contract. So if I'm double siding the transaction. Number 4, the suggestion of creating your own marketing action plan. I'll show you an example of mine, and the amend extend listing contract. So with that, what I will do is I'm going to go into the listing contract. So let me see here if I can get to that. We're going to go back here. So this is the Colorado exclusive right to sell listing contract. And I have it marked here as transaction broker. You can do transaction broker or you can do seller agency. So I will mark that either seller agency or transaction broker. And then I will add that it is a multiple firm that we're in since we have multiple licensees in Radius. And again, we're going over the exclusive right to sell listing contract. So this one, I'm going to show you how if I were to sell my own personal property, because this was a question that came up, as a matter of fact, last night with one of our agents that was not aware that we do need to list that we are a licensed broker in the state of Colorado in the additional provisions when we are selling a property that we own. So I'm actually going to assume that I, or use this example that I actually own this property. That is Lot 15, Wind Trail Subdivision, Fort Fun, Larimer County, that it's 1115 Dogma Trail, LaPorte 80535. Then from there, what I'll do is I'll fill in the blanks, and it's nice that this actually shows me in the blue highlighted section what I have filled in as per the Colorado real estate availability for us to practice law, limited practice of law. So the contract would begin, I put this as yesterday, and that it would go until the end of the year. Excuse me. And so then I also go in here, as we mentioned last week, about the computation of periods of days, deadlines, that it will be extended to the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or a holiday. And then I go through the brokerage relationship. And if I were presenting this contract to someone other than myself, I would go through these as I have already given them the definitions of relationships and gone through that with them. But again, just to reiterate that if the seller agency box at the top of page 1 is checked, broker represents seller as seller's limited agent or the seller's agent. If the transaction brokerage box at the top of page 1 is checked, broker acts as a transaction broker. In company transaction for different brokers, when the seller and buyer at a transaction are working with different brokers within the brokerage firm, those brokers continue to conduct themselves consistent with the brokerage relationships they have established. Seller acknowledges that brokerage firm is allowed to offer and pay compensation to brokers within brokerage firm working for a buyer. So let's say, for example, if Sheila had the buyer for my listing and she had an exclusive right to buy contract with a buyer, she could still carry out her duties as a buyer's agent, and I would still continue to work as a seller's agent. For either myself as the principal, or let's say for a seller that I've gone into this contract as a seller's agent. The in-company transaction, if it's one broker, this is a key factor. Remember this, that if the seller and buyer are both working with the same broker, broker must function as either a seller's agent. If the seller agency box at the top of page 1 is checked, the parties agree to the following applies. seller's agency unless brokerage relationship with both. So what I would do is if this was a listing for somebody, let's say my best friend's house, and I have it listed, I'm working as a seller's agent, then I must treat the buyer as a customer. If I have checked the box that it's a seller's agent only, and then I would treat that customer or that buyer as a customer. But let's say I have it just marked as seller's agent, and it says that I can actually go to and change status. So it says a customer is a party to a transaction with whom broker has no brokerage relationship. The broker must disclose to such customer broker's relationship with the seller. Again, that's where I would hand that buyer. Let's say I met this buyer at a for sale or at an open house. I would give them the definition of brokerage relationships and explain to them that I can certainly help them. I'm working as a seller's agent on this particular home. However, I'm happy to help you as a customer. So I would give them that. If that buyer happens to be a buyer that I have an exclusive right to buy buyer agency with, and I'm going to be working with that particular buyer, if broker delivers to seller a written change of status that the broker has a brokerage relationship with the buyer, then the broker is working with both the seller and the buyer as a transaction broker. So if in the box 4.3.1.2 is checked, seller agency only applies instead. So if I had this as seller agency only, if I had seller agency and then I said seller agency only, then I would need to treat that customer or that buyer as a customer. Since I don't, I can go into this and utilize this as working as a transaction broker for both. And I'll show you when we get down to the brokerage, the brokerage disclosure at the end of the contract, that it will show you a box where you can check that says that it is a change of status. So does anybody have any questions so far? I know, Sheila, you can't really use your microphone, but if you have questions, please be sure and put them in the chat box, or you can just chime in if you want to chime in, Janice. You're more than welcome to. I'm glad to see you here this morning. So again, thank you. We want to go through the brokerage duties. And again, these are the uniform duties that we have agreed to upon to do this for all of our sellers, regardless of who we are, that we as licensed real estate brokers in the state of Colorado, we must exercise reasonable skill and care for the seller, including but not limited to performing the terms of any written or oral agreement with the seller, presenting all offers in a timely manner, regardless of whether the property is subject to a contract for sale. This one, again, some folks think, oh, we're under contract with the first offer, we don't need to worry about it. We're going to go to closing. Well, again, it's our fiduciary responsibility to continue to present any and all offers to our sellers or to our clients until it is absolutely completely sold and closed. Disclosing to the seller adverse material facts actually known by the broker. Again, if we know anything about the buyer, let's say we have a buyer that comes in with an offer and we know that that buyer has filed bankruptcy, or we've seen that their house, their own personal home is in foreclosure, or we know something about them that we know that their financial status may not be solid for them to go ahead and move forward with obtaining financing, that is considered a material fact. So I can go ahead, if it's as of public record, I can go ahead and let my seller know that. Sometimes we do know, sometimes like in the areas that I sell, neighbors kind of know what neighbors are doing. And so if I actually live in the neighborhood that I'm selling, I may know some of that situation and some of that, what's going on behind the scenes. So again, my job is to advise the seller regarding the transaction and advising the seller to obtain expert advice as to material matters about which broker knows, but the specifics of which are beyond the expertise of the broker. So again, if there's anything, material facts that I know about the neighborhood, maybe I know that they're going to be condemning a property in the neighborhood, something along those lines, I can advise the seller that they need to get that information themselves or verify it through the city and get that information. So my job isn't to know everything about everything, but it is to advise my seller to obtain expert advice. Again, my responsibility includes accounting in a timely manner for all money and property received. Again, the nice thing about it is these days we don't actually pick up the earnest money checks in hand with our written contract and go and deliver them to the title company like we used to in the good old days. Nowadays, most things are being transferred electronically. However, if they do in fact still give me that written check, I am responsible for getting that over to the title company. And I mean, like right now. It doesn't mean that I let it sit in my car or whatever for a few days and go, okay, I'll get it there when I get it there. I also need to be very mindful that I don't want any of that information sitting in my car or having that check sit on the dashboard or something. Now, some of that seems to make sense, like common sense, but sometimes those things, unless we're told that we don't think about it. So again, I typically will keep the contracts in a trunk if I have a car that's got a trunk, so that it doesn't get lost, it doesn't blow out the window, what have you. So again, our job as well is that we must keep the seller fully informed regarding the transaction. And that doesn't mean we have to call them every single day, doesn't mean we have to text them every single moment. But we do need to have an expectation set up, and that's where we'll get to with my success marketing plan. Put that in a more realistic timeline so that you know what you're going to do for your seller and your seller knows what your seller is going to do for you. Again, if something comes in immediately, then yes, absolutely, we need to contact them immediately. If there's something that's timely that we need to get information from them or to them, obviously we're going to do that in a timely manner. We will not disclose the following information without the informed consent of the seller: that the seller is willing to accept less than the asking price for the property, what the motivating factors are for the seller to sell the property, that the seller will agree to financing terms other than those offered, any material information about the seller unless disclosure is required by law or failure to disclose such information would constitute fraud or dishonest dealing. Let's go back here for a second. So if the seller says, hey, I'll accept less for the property, well, this is where I have a real heart-to-heart conversation with my seller and say, well, then let's list it at that price. If we really want to get it sold and you'll accept that, let's get it sold for that. If they say, no, I want to list it at, $580, although I know I would take $560, we've got to list it where they say we need to list it, but we are not able to disclose. The way that I handle that is if an agent calls and they say, hey, Amber, will your seller accept less for this property? I'll say, you know what? Everything is negotiable. The list price was set by the seller. However, please bring me something in writing. Would love to see it in offer. So it's not a direct no. It's not going against this 5.2.1 that yes, they would. It's encouraging an offer. Again, that's where the art of negotiation comes in, and that's where we come in as professionals in this business. Again, if the seller will agree to financing terms other than those offered, why wouldn't we ask the seller to put those out there on the MLS? If they're willing to do seller financing, let's market it as such. They don't have to accept it unless it's a full price offer and has those financing terms in there that they're agreeing to or that they would like to see. Again, we go through all of these, that we consent to broker's disclosure of seller's confidential information to the supervising broker or designee for the purpose of proper supervision, provided such supervising broker or designee does not further disclose such information without consent of seller or use of such information to the detriment of seller. Again, if you call me as your employing broker and say, oh my gosh, Amber, these guys are going into foreclosure. I'm not so sure what we can do with this. Can you help me out with it? You're able to disclose that to me because I am the employing broker. And we know that we're not going to use that information as a detriment to the seller. Brokerage firm may have agreements with other sellers to market and sell their property. Be sure to let them know this. Again, sometimes our sellers think that their property is the only property that we are selling. And sometimes they create unrealistic demands on us as, quote, their broker. So we may show alternative properties not owned by the seller to other prospective buyers and list competing properties for sale. Again, keep in mind, and this is a good one to go over with our clients to let them know, if I pick up a buyer from the open house that I had on your particular home, I may actually take them and go show them other properties and sell them something else. Some sellers along the way over the years I've heard have gotten upset over that. And obviously that's why that's been put into the listing contract. So we do not have to seek additional offers to purchase the property while the property is subject to a contract for sale. So we don't actually have to continue to market and get other contracts out there, but if they do come in, we do have to present them. We have no duty to conduct an independent inspection of the property for the benefit of a buyer. And we have no duty to independently verify the accuracy or completeness of statements made by seller or independent inspectors. The broker has no duty to conduct an independent investigation of a buyer's financial condition or to verify the accuracy or completeness of any statement made by a buyer. This is huge. This is where this contract is written to protect us as the broker. This is so that these clients of ours, our sellers, don't feel like we're supposed to be omniscient and know absolutely everything about everything. Yes, we do need to be professional and have an awareness and educate ourselves on what's going on in the neighborhood, in their home with the buyer. We can do our own, quote, due diligence, but this says we don't have to know absolutely everything, and the onus is really back on the seller. Again, the seller understands that the seller is not liable for broker's acts or omissions that have not been approved, directed, or ratified by seller. This I explained to them. It was called vicarious liability years ago. This says that if I happen to be standing on their property and I make some unlandish, crazy statement about something that maybe, let's say, violates federal fair housing, this means that the seller is not directly liable for something that I have done. So that means that what I do is what I do, and I carry that responsibility myself, that the seller does not have to take that vicarious liability as well, nor do I have to take that for my seller, which again is huge, because with everything today in the world, what I might think is just a general statement might be something that upsets somebody, and vice versa with the seller. So that's a big saving line there in this contract for us as brokers. So this does say that I will disclose to prospective buyers and cooperating brokers the existence of offers on the property and whether the offers were obtained by the broker, a broker within brokerage firm, or by another broker. I say yes on this. I typically like to ask my sellers, can I be as transparent as possible with the other brokers? So like, let's, for example, say Janice calls and says, hey, Amber, I'm thinking about writing an offer on your listing on Dogma. Would you take another offer? And I can say, you know what, Janice, I have one in hand, and I can say that, yes, I have obtained these offers and it was written with somebody within my office. If she asks, that's because I want to be able to tell her that if she asks me. I don't want to have to say, oh, I can't tell you. So keep in mind, some brokers, some listing agents, or some sellers, though, do not want us to tell that. So this is a big one too. Make sure you check that box and you discuss it with your seller. Again, we do what the seller would like us to do. So again, additional duties of a seller's agent. As a seller's agent, we are going to promote the interests of the seller with the utmost good faith, loyalty, and fidelity. We're going to seek a price and terms that are set forth in the seller's listing contract. And we will counsel the seller as to any material benefits or risks of a transaction that are actually known by the broker. So for example, this just came up this last week. If I have an offer, if I have competing offers in hand and I'm presenting them to my seller, and one of them has a contingency that they have to sell their townhome and it's listed with ABC Company, okay? And then I have the same exact offer, price, terms, everything, but the contingency happens to be that it is going to be purchased by Zillow. I actually even advised this with one of our agents this week or last week that, yes, absolutely, I would take the contingency contract that has Zillow as a buyer. Zillow is a very strong company, or somebody like that, So I would say that that's probably has a higher probability of closing than perhaps, you know, Mr. and Mrs. whatever over here that we don't know anything about them. So that's an actual material benefit that I would be disclosing to my seller. Again, I don't know these other sellers over here, and I don't know the actual what's going to happen in that transaction. I could certainly do more due diligence and find out. But for me, just right off the bat, if I'm looking at the two of them, I'm going to say right up front, wow, I think this one would be a much stronger contingency contract with Zillow as the buyer versus just some other person that's buying or selling that property. Okay, so compensation to brokerage firm and to cooperative brokers. Seller agrees that any brokerage firm compensation that is conditioned upon the sale of the property will be earned by brokerage firm. Again, it's paid for by the brokerage firm as set forth herein without any discount or allowance or any efforts made by seller or by any other person in connection with sale of property. So again, the seller agrees to pay. I put in here sales commission, let's say 22%. Whatever that is in your listing contract that you put in, I just use that as an arbitrary number. I'm going to check the box buyers agents and transaction brokers. I don't actually see the benefit to my seller to exclude paying buyers agents. I feel like let's have them bring the buyer. I don't care if they're working as a transaction broker or if they're working as a buyer's agent. It is good for me to know in the negotiation process if they're working as a buyer's agent. However, it shouldn't really matter to me, this is my opinion, what they're acting as for my seller. Now, if my seller has a difference of opinion and they say, no, we don't want to have any buyer's agents bring the buyer to sell our home, then I would not check that, only at the directive of my seller. For me, I'm going to check both of them because I want to increase the buyer pool, and by the agents that have those buyers out there, I want them to come and write an offer on this listing that I have. So I say I'm going to agree to pay them 11% of the gross sales price on both of them. I don't vary those commissions percentages for either a buyer's agent or a transaction broker. Again, that's just my opinion. I have seen it differently in different areas and different marketplaces. I feel like, again, that's doing a disadvantage to my seller, so I choose not to do that. I'm not going to be leasing this listing. It's not for lease. And again, I do have in here 7.1.3 other compensation. I had said that we would discuss this, and this is one of those clauses that when you go into CTM or you go into Iris, you'll see the little clause. It's like a little notebook up in the top right-hand corner under additional provisions or in this section of other compensation that you can click on, and you can choose from, I think there's like 50 or something clauses that were written by Frascona, Joyner, Goodman, and Greenstein for our company to go ahead and utilize. So this tells me variable or reduced commission if only one broker. So let's say I have this listing and I say, you know what, if I sell it myself, if I end up obtaining the buyer because these clients are such great clients of mine, I'm going to give them a discount. This is the clause that I would use. So it would say if the broker identified in, and it would say paragraph 3.3, which is me, of this seller listing contract is the only real estate broker involved in the sale of the property, so that no other brokerage firm and no other individual broker from the brokerage firm is owed or entitled to claim a cooperating commission or portion thereof, then the commission or compensation payable pursuant to paragraph 7.1.1 of this contract will be reduced to, in this example, 20%. So I'm giving them basically a 2%. It would have been originally the 22% sales commission. I'm saying if I double side it, I'm going to give them a total 20% commission at a 2% discount. So then it says seller understands that under current rules, regulations of most multiple listing services, a variable commission agreement, such as that contained in the preceding paragraph, is required to be disclosed in any MLS listing for the property. And this may tend to discourage showings. Again, that goes back to my agreement that I've made with our MLS. whether it's Iris or CTM, that says if I am going to be a variable compensation broker, which means this, I need to indicate that in MLS. Now, some agents will say, I'm not going to work with those brokers that are doing that because they call us discount brokers. They don't want us to give discounts to our clients. That's an ethical situation. I just, again, following the rules and regulations of what we've signed in our MLS, we do need to put in there that if I'm going to give my sellers a discount, I have to mark that, yes, it is a variable commission. Okay, any questions so far? I know that's been a lot. Questions about the clauses that we can add in under this other compensation? Nope.
I do. I have a question. So,
oh, sure.
Are these clauses? Are they put into CTM already? Because I have CTM, but I don't know if it's been switched over. I don't think it's been switched over or anything yet.
So if you have gone into CTM and they know that you're with Radius Agent LLC, then they will go ahead and it will automatically populate for you.
Okay.
So if you need some help with that, Janice, reach out and I'm happy to help you, or you can call CTM direct.
Okay.
But they are there. We did purchase them through the company, so they are there for your availability.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, and they will automatically populate. They have some weird font context prior to that I just delete out. And then I go ahead and move forward with the actual clause itself.
Okay, perfect. I will contact them. Thank you.
Yes, then I don't have to play that I'm an attorney without a license.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's not good. That is illegal. We don't do that. So, okay, well, thank you for the question, Janice. I appreciate that. So then we're going to get paid our commission, and it says, I do this. I say that, any sale of the property within the listing period by the seller, by broker, by any other person, that's when I'm going to get paid. The broker finding a buyer who is ready, willing, and able to complete the sale or lease as specified in the seller listing contract. So if we had this contract, realistically, let's say we had it listed for $850,000, I get a cash buyer that comes in and they want to pay $850,000, and they've waived appraisal, inspection, due diligence, and title. And they say, we're good. We're ready to close. And the day of closing, my seller says, oh, I don't want to sell. Number one, they could be sued for specific performance by the buyer. Number two, they would owe me a commission. It's that clear. And again, I think with us, we need to protect our commissions. We work really hard for our money, and understanding and learning and doing classes like this and our experience out there in the field. That's what we are paid for, is being a professional. So keep that in mind that, if they just all of a sudden change their mind, if it is a full price offer, they have to sell. And they don't have to sell, they can be sued, but they have to pay us a commission as per this contract. Provided the seller will owe so then any sale or lease of the property within 180 calendar days after the listing period expires. So again, I had the listing period expiring the end of the year, 12/31/21. So 180 calendar days after that. To anyone whom broker negotiated and whose name was submitted in writing to seller by broker during the listing period, provided, however, that the seller will owe the commission to the brokerage firm under this paragraph 7.2.3 if commission is earned by another licensed brokerage firm acting pursuant to an exclusive agreement entered into during the holdover period and a sale or lease to a submitted prospect is consummated. I know that's a lot. So if we break that up, basically it says, when I'm still in my listing contract timeline, and we're getting to the end of the contract, let's say it is December 30th and we still have not gotten this property sold, I'm going to submit the names in writing to my seller during that listing period of everybody that we have negotiated with. So let's say we had 3 offers come in on this property. One of them was for $550,000. One of them was for $320,000. One of them was for $649,000. None of them went through. They were all failed contracts, or they didn't even They didn't even accept the offers, so they weren't even under contract yet. But I was still a party to helping present those offers to this seller and coordinating and negotiating with that other agent. I'm going to provide those names to the seller to let them know that if this person comes back after our listing period has expired, that they do agree that they're going to pay me a commission. So that basically means like, okay, the end of the year, now when it's expired, let's say they decide to go ahead and put it on the market in February, and they put it on the market with another agent. They've listed the contract, or they've listed the property with another agent, but I put in the names of, Kimberly came with her agent from ABC Realty, made an offer on this property, and now Kimberly is going back in February to the new listing company, and she's making an offer and saying, hey, I want to buy this property. If I have Kimberly's name, as I had submitted to this seller, they will owe me a commission. That seller will owe me a commission because I helped in negotiating that contract originally for Kimberly through her agent at ABC Realty. So again, it's a little bit sticky, but that's why we need to keep track of what we're doing with our clients while they are our clients, if by chance we ever have to go back and claim a commission. Again, we have worked really, really hard for our money. Again, this is where this box seller will owe the commission to a brokerage firm. Sometimes you'll have sellers that will say, no, if you don't sell it during this time period, and Amber, I'm sorry, then that's something that the seller can dictate. I personally don't take listings that do that. I like to work with people that say, hey, Amber, your time is worth your money and we're willing to pay you for the job that you've done. Again, then it says that the seller will owe the commission to the brokerage firm, which would be Radius, under this 7.2.3. If a commission is earned by another licensed brokerage firm acting pursuant to an exclusive agreement entered into during the holdover period, and a sale or lease to a submitted prospect is consummated. Okay, this means that the seller, if the seller doesn't provide these names to that new listing agent, they may owe 2 commissions. They may owe me a commission, and they may owe their new agency a commission, their new listing broker a commission. So pay attention to this, because again, on the listing side, we need to have that as well. So we'll cover that in just a little bit. So if no box is checked in this 7.2.3, then seller does not owe the commission to the brokerage firm. Again, a lot of people will just skate over that and be like, that's fine. I guess I've been in the business long enough. I have enough gray hair and wrinkles that I want to get paid for the money that for the time that I'm spending on people. So you can talk with me if you have any questions about that afterwards, or if you have any questions right now, I can take them too. Okay, moving on. So when applicable, the commission obligation applies to the sale made during the listing period or any extension of such original or extended term. The commission is payable at the time of closing of the sale, or if there is no closing due to the refusal or neglect of the seller, then the contracted date of closing is contemplated, or upon fulfillment of where the offer made by such buyer is not accepted by the seller. So again, that would say that the commission obligation applies to the sale made during the listing period or any extension. So if we do a listing agreement and we extend the listing contract to say January of next year, then it's within that listing extension as well. If there's no closing, so let's say the seller says, oh, I just changed my mind at the last minute, we're not going to really move to Florida, we want to stay here in Colorado, they're still going to owe me a commission. So it would be due on the date of the closing that was originally set in that contract, as contemplated, as we all were anticipating that it was going to close next Friday. If the seller changes their mind on Thursday, says, no, I'm not going to close, realistically, they would owe me a commission on Friday. Again, so that kind of covers that. Limitation on third-party compensation. We're not going to get compensated either way. We would need to let them know if we were going to be compensated for other services performed by any third party or affiliate business entity unless the seller signs a separate written consent for such services. This is an important paragraph. Let's say I'm the lender as well, because we do have agents that have their MLOs and they are mortgage brokers as well. I need to have my affiliated business disclosure signed by that seller and signed by that buyer to let them know that, oh, by the way, this buyer that's coming in happens to be a client of mine. I'm going to get paid on the loan itself. We have to disclose that. So keep in mind, if there's anything like that that comes up, if there's any affiliated business disclosure, we need to let that be known. Let's say, okay, I have this listing, and let's say I own a portion of a gutter company. If I'm an owner in that gutter company and we've negotiated through the contract that the gutters need to be replaced, and everybody's agreed that we're going to use this gutter company that I own, gutters are us, and I'm going to get a portion of that as an owner principal in that gutter company, I better make sure I have an affiliated business disclosure signed by all parties to let them know out of that $1,000 compensation or that they've paid the gutter company, I may only receive $10 of it, but I still have to let it be known that I'm an owner in that company as an affiliated business disclosure. Other brokers' assistance, multiple listing services and marketing, we say that, you know, we will use the advertising and use of MLS and various methods making a property accessible by other brokerage firms, using lock boxes by appointment only showings, etc., and whether some methods may limit the ability of another broker to show the property. And having been so advised, the property will be or will not be submitted to one or more MLS and will be submitted to one or more property information exchanges. Again, some sellers will say, "Ooh, I don't really want it on the MLS." That's a disadvantage, I believe, for them in marketing. So I have that discussion with them. But if they choose not to, we can choose not to put it in MLS. I actually filled out a listing contract, though, on a property that I had sold to the neighbor. So we did not actually submit the property to the MLS. And that was where I had marked the box, will not be submitted to one or more MLSs, because it was already going to be sold to the neighbor. Again, in that MLS, it says the property address will be displayed on the internet. Some of them are not. Again, I just took a class last week that talked about the Jean Benet house down in Boulder. They never, ever put that property address on the MLS. They never actually ever market that the property is actively for sale. They don't want a bunch of people coming by and saying, "Ooh, let's go in and check out that house. Let's go see what we can see," because they'll be inundated with all sorts of people because that was such a big, you know, such a big story on the news. So again, sometimes people can say, "No, I don't want the address listed. No, I don't want it to be displayed on the internet." Again, very specific information situations, but our sellers do have that choice. Again, here we may access the property by electronic lockbox or a manual lockbox. And I put manual lockbox and I put on here the code because it said if there's a code, and I always think this is funny, the IYQ. I like that one. I like you, right? Then I can put other instructions in here. The lockbox will be attached to the railing on the front porch. Again, as per my safety class that we just took, and I think Sheila, you were there with me, it talked about, let's try to make it a little bit more safe when these agents are coming up to the property. So instead of having it actually on the front door where our backs are to our clients, let's put it on a railing so that we can still stay facing our clients as we're obtaining access to that property. So again, that was just another little tidbit that I learned a few weeks ago. Broker and the seller authorized following persons in the property, active licensed real estate brokers. I don't allow unlicensed brokers assistance. I don't know if they are bonded or bondable by the state of Colorado, like we are as licensed agents. I should have marked this licensed appraisers. Whoops, my little snafu. Again, I would mark that. And I would mark here too that staging company and photographer or videographer, that they would be allowed access as well. And then the following specific marketing tasks will be performed by the broker. Now this, for me, I learned years ago to go ahead and do a marketing action plan. This way it spells out specifically what I'm going to do. Now, if you don't have a marketing action plan, this is where you'll put in there. I'm going to coordinate and get cleaning people over. I'm going to have a videographer and a stager go over. I'm going to create a brochure. We're going to input it into MLS. I'm going to have somebody come over and take measurements of the property and do a sketch for me so I can upload it. You can actually type in all of those specific situations on every single listing, or you can say, check out my Amber Success marketing plan or market action plan. And again, I can kind of give you an idea of that. Let me see if I can share this part with you. Whoops. Well, let's go here. I think I have this on the slide as well. So this is within my my Iris CMA, Cloud CMA that I do. So it will go through here and it will show me, here's part of my market action plan. Sign and complete listing agreement, enter into the MLS, put up a sign for sale, install a lockbox. All of these things that we do, it will tell if I hold open house. Sometimes I'll go in and edit this and say I will hold one open house unless deemed necessary by a listing agent. This way it is crystal clear as to what it is that we are going to do for our clients. So now let's see if I can go back to the contract. So again, that's where I would put in my Amber's listing or Amber's action marketing plan there, or you can spell that out. Please, please, please do not put in there anything it takes to sell this home. That like makes my skin crawl, because that opens us up for a lawsuit, because your interpretation of anything to sell this home and the seller's interpretation of anything to sell this home could be completely different. I have seen that on listing contracts that have come through. And if in fact that happens, I will send you a love note in SkySlope and say, hey, can we define anything, please? Because this is for your protection. What if they want you to stand outside naked, upside down? I mean, really, I'm not going to do that to help sell my listings. And yet, in a court of law, they could say, you said you would do anything to sell this home. So I know that sounds a little facetious. However, keep in mind, my definition and my interpretation of a word or a clause or a sentence like that is completely different than what a seller could possibly do. And specifically when we have a seller that is upset that we haven't gotten their property sold. So keep that in mind. Again, I put in here just an exception to this 9.3.2. Seller authorizes videos and pictures of both the interior and exterior of the property, except, and I put in here the master bedroom closet. What if I have a gun safe in this listing? What if the seller has a gun safe and it's in the master bedroom closet and they don't want that to be photographed? Or if they have, I don't know, a Yadro set or something in their China hutch that they haven't been able to move out of the property that's extremely expensive, high dollar. They don't want it in the property. They don't want it to be shown on the internet, all of the photos, everything that's out there. You know, some people may have high-end art collections. Maybe they don't want their art gallery to be photographed. So those are the types of things that we would put into this particular paragraph here at 9.3.2. Marketing termination. Again, this is another one that has come up and has had some issues in the past. Broker and brokerage firm may discontinue using any marketing materials if, in brokerage firm's sole discretion, broker or brokerage firm receives a credible threat of litigation or a complaint regarding the use of such marketing material. Let's say the seller gives me some information about the house and they say, oh yeah, this is a design basic plan from when we built the house. I've got the approval to use it. Not a problem, Amber. Go ahead and upload it. Well, in our MLS, it's going to ask me if I have a copyright disclosure form that I would need to actually upload. But let's say the seller gives me this, but Design Basic forgets that they actually gave one to this particular owner. We could have a problem. So in the meantime, I would need to remove that floor plan or that elevation, whatever it is that I might be marketing on this particular property. So keep in mind this here. And then also it says upon the expiration of the listing period, that I'll use reasonable efforts to remove information But understand that the information submitted to either the MLS or information exchanges may be difficult. So they may say to me, Amber, I want you to take off all the photos that we had of the property because I don't want anybody else to go back up and look at them after the fact. But I can't guarantee that that's going to happen across the board in the internet world. Again, kind of going through this very specifically, but it's extremely important that you understand because there's a lot of this that I think as listing agents, we don't go in and take the time to actually read what it is that we're telling our sellers we are willing to do and what we're obligated to do. So let's see here, negotiations and communications. So again, we're going to say here, no existing listing agreement. We're going to say, if I'm taking this listing that I'm not a party to any listing agreement with any other broker to sell the property. So this is when, let's say, this seller decides to not have me continue with my listing agreement in February and goes to list with some other company. This is where that seller would need to say to that other company, you know what? I have received a list of submitted prospects pursuant to previous listing agreement to sell the property with any other broker. That's when that seller would be obligated to give that list of submitted prospects to that new listing agent so that then I could get paid. Now, it may or may not actually transpire. Hopefully it would be given to them and that other agent will actually respect and honor that we have helped negotiate with this seller prior to. Okay, so again, some of this other stuff you can go ahead and go through and read specifically. Foreclosure Protection Act, that we could do a whole seminar on. So let's say here we're going to fill in again the price and terms, cash, conventional, if they're going to pay any loan discount points. If by chance this was a property that the price point was FHA and VA, then we would need to call our lender and find out how much could a seller participate in paying towards these down payment closing costs. And I would put that in there under 11.4. The earnest money is typically 1% of the sales price. So I'm going to say earnest money is $15,000 in form of bankable funds. Again, here, my sellers typically get their proceeds at closing through a cashier's check at seller's expense, or the closing company a trust account check without them having an expense of that. So that way, then they can take that check and go across the street to their bank or their credit union and directly deposit it and not have an issue with it. Wire transfer funds, they still are successful, but they still are risky. So for me, I always suggest that, pay the extra $20, get a cashier's check at your expense. And again, you want to double check with your bank as to the cost of that cashier's check. It may be more than $20 nowadays. Again, going through, we're going to fill in inclusions. We talked about that, I think, last week a little bit. Personal property. Other inclusions I would put in here, and I always spell out clothes washer and clothes dryer. And I think that's because John Goodman said that one time in one of his CE classes. Because if I just say washer and dryer, well, what's the washer and dryer of what? Your hair dryer? I don't know. I remember him saying that in a class one time. So spell it out: clothes washer, clothes dryer, gas range, sub-zero refrigerator and freezer, disposal dishwasher, wine cooler. They have one of those cool wine refrigerator cooler things that's in the kitchen or in the bar area, bar refrigerator, and ice maker, and trash compactor. Then from there, exclusions, all personal property and staging items. Parking facilities, no parking facilities with this, no deeded water rights. Now let's say this was a rural property and perhaps they have deeded water rights. Then I would check that box and then I would let them know where it is, the special warranty deed, that there are X amount of shares in the Big Thompson. That's where I would actually put that information. If it had a well, I would check that box and then I would fill in the well permit. Then from there, agriculture, if there were any crops to be grown on there, but that's a whole nother beast. So we would need to talk about that. Conveyance, again, we talked about this last week that we want a general warranty deed. We're going to ask the seller to pass on a general warranty deed unless it's like a trust or something along those lines, then it will be a special warranty deed. Monetary encumbrances. This is where I ask my sellers, can you tell me, what do you owe against this property? Oh, I owe a loan in the amount of $640,000 held by Chase Bank, approximately. I don't necessarily need the number and what have you right now. The title company will call and ask for that from the sellers prior to closing. And that is, that's information that I don't really need to put on my file and keep in my information mode, because if it gets disclosed and lost out there somewhere, then I could be held liable. So I just don't even take the loan number. I let the transaction coordinator or the title company rep go ahead and handle that. Again, if there's any association assessments, let's say $450 per year, then from there, time and date of closing is when I say there, that's when the possession is. We don't always put in delivery of deed, because sometimes that deed doesn't actually get mailed to them until after closing. So I know sometimes people will say fully funded. That's okay as well, but I typically just put in their time and date of closing. Sometimes I'll put in there unless otherwise agreed upon in writing. However, we also have that already addressed in this contract, because or in the buy-sell contract, because if we do have that, it will be considered a post-closing occupancy agreement. So then from there, seller's obligation, we agree to provide seller's property disclosure. Again, this is where we can have the seller say, yep, I will fill that out, or no, I will not fill that out. And then that's where, if we have the seller's property disclosure form and they are not willing to fill it out, at least have them sign and date it. I typically will write something on it or have them write on it that I'm not going to fill it out. I've never lived in the property, something along those lines. If they're not willing to do anything, at least get them to sign it. We'll have this in the listing contract. If by chance somebody asks any questions about why they didn't, we can say they agreed not to. That is their choice. I advise against them doing that, because I'd rather they let us know more about the property, even if they just know a few things like, oh yeah, if I'm a investor, I know that I put a new washer and dryer in, or clothes washer and dryer in last year, then they can know that. Then from there, as we go through, again, I'm going to say that if there's a forfeiture of payments made by a buyer, let's say that the buyer ends up not closing and their earnest money is at risk, they're losing their earnest money, I say that it will be divided between the brokerage firm and the seller. Again, I work really hard for my money. So if there's $15,000 out there that could potentially, the buyer could lose, let's divide it between the brokerage firm and the seller. Now, the seller may not or may not always agree to that. They may want to have it in a different situation where it would be 100% to the seller, or they're willing to pay me a portion of it. I can put a percentage in there as well. Again, just kind of going through here, additional provisions. This, again, I said I would mention because I saw it come up yesterday. I have to put in here, if I'm selling my own property, that I am a licensed agent in the state of Colorado. I have to put that in the additional provisions. And by the way, if it is your own property, it still needs to go through your brokerage, which means we still need to fill out the contracts. We still need to submit them to SkySlope. We still need to carry them through as if it were any other contract or any other buyer or seller. Even if I'm a principal in, let's say, LLC, let's say I'm one of the investor owners, I still have to have that. And if the listing is being sold by, AHS LLC, which is Amber Huber and my brother Shane, that I'm still selling it, and then I still have to say on here that I am a licensed agent in the state of Colorado. Has to be known. Then here's all the attachments, closing instructions, definition of working relationships, lead-based paint disclosure, obligations of seller for the lead-based paint disclosure, seller's property disclosure, source of water addendum if I have not filled out that information in the seller's property disclosure, and then the square footage disclosure. Then from there, it says electronic notice. I always add in there on the internet, and then I would sign it myself as brokerage firm authorizes broker to execute this seller listing contract on behalf of the brokerage firm. This would be my signature here as the seller. And then from there, it would be my signature here as the broker. So I know that's a lot of information, and I think you had a couple of things in the chat up here. So let's see. Oh, nope, we're good. Any questions so far? Okay, Kimberly, do I have time to go into the manufactured home?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, sounds good. So actually, one last thing I was going to say, let's say we have an amend extend. Listing contract amend extend. Again, this is the listing contract amend extend that I would use. I would have checked that exclusive right to sell listing contract, the date, subdivision, again, the date ending the listing period. Let's say I'm extending it to January 3rd. And then also I got a huge price reduction. So now it's changed to $875. Other terms and conditions, contract remain the same. The seller's going to go ahead and sign there. I'm going to sign as the seller up there. I'm going to sign as the broker on the second line. I guess you can't see my finger pointing to my screen. Anyway, so I would sign here as the seller and I would sign here as the broker. So there's that for you. And so if we go into the manufactured home contract to buy and sell, I think we talked about this. We talked about the manufactured home buy sell contract in the last contracts class. So this is if we're the listing agent. So, and it is a little bit intricate here. So it talks about, you know, what do we have to sell? And so I'm going to say here, excuse me, that the buyer, okay, the buyer is Mr. Buyer, and that the seller example, and we're going to go here, and here's the manufacturer, Champion, the model is Redmond, serial number 123456, the size, age, the certificate number, and the manufacturer number. I have some information if you would like me to send it. It does discuss that the HUD tag actually is synonymous in the words of describing it as the seller certificate and or the manufacturer tab number. Anything built after 1976 will have this. It's going to be in a like a 2x4 metal tag on the back of each individual unit of the manufactured home. So you would look for that. Typically it's red, but sometimes it will be weathered and the red will come off, but it is a metal tag that is stamped with the certificate number. You can call it certificate number, HUD number, manufacturer number, and that will be 3 letters, and then it will be 6 numbers after. 3 letters dash and then 6 numbers after. The VIN number is also on there, and it explains to you, if you go through it, you can say that it was manufactured at this area, at this particular, from this particular manufacturer's section in Florida, and then it will give the number there. So there's different ways that they can actually track down where in fact this manufactured home was manufactured. Make sure that yes, it was approved, everything's okay and inspected. So this is information that hopefully you as the listing agent will have, that your seller will be able to provide for you. If not, you're going to have to look for it and get it. Again, that's part of our job too, and it's a huge job in doing this, especially if you're not aware of what needs to have, what you need to have in a manufactured home sale. Please call me directly. I will help walk you through this. We'll get the information that we need so that we are competent in this sale. So again, the lot home is located in Larimer County, space number 62 in Harmony Park, 123 Fictitious Way, Fort Fun, Colorado. Again, we're going to go through here that dishwasher, disposal, range oven, refrigerator, blind, ceiling fan. I'm going to say there's 1. I'm going to put in here the leased items, that the lot lease with Harmony Mobile Home Park, $759 a month, exclude all of the personal property. Again, then we're going to go through these things like lot owner approval. So that's when the lot owner has to go in and be approved by the park. And so since the new owner, the buyer, is the one that wants to go in and get approved by the park, it will be paid for typically by the buyer. Again, everything is negotiable on this. So you can say paid 1/2 by buyer, 1/2 by seller, what have you. Sometimes those fees are, you know, $140, what have you. I think they go in and they do a credit check. and they'll do some other things just to make sure that they can approve this buyer, that they really do want them into the community. And so that's a whole nother situation that you would like to familiarize yourself with the park. Go over and talk to the park manager, get as much information as possible as you can so that you can help in marketing this property appropriately. Again, dates and deadlines, similar to what we have in the regular buy-sell contract. The UCC and title deadline, that's that we want to get all of the information if we need to find out or track down that manufacturer's certificate number. If, let's say, that plate or that tag has fallen off, we're going to have some time to actually get that taken care of. But hopefully, as a listing agent, we've gotten that done even prior to us listing the property. So when we're under contract, we can get that to the buyer pretty quickly. So then from there, lease delivery deadline, again, we need to let them know what the lease is on the property, what it entails, their lot lease, seller's property disclosure. Hopefully we have that. So again, all of these dates and deadlines are very similar to what we fill out for ours on the regular buy-sell contract in a residential property. This, I'm writing it as there's no loan, so I don't have a loan application deadline. I do not have the appraisal deadline, objection, or resolution deadline in there. Again, going to go through and put in here conditional sale deadline. There's nothing there. Closing date. I always put the possession time, and I put the actual time zone. So I put in Mountain Standard Time, just so that we're very clear, because we could be dealing with, buyers that are maybe in Arizona or maybe in Florida. It's a different time zone there. And so I think Arizona is the same. So that's why I switched it to Florida. But let's say, somebody, we want to know they're going to get back to us by 4 p.m. Well, does that mean 4 p.m. Florida time or our time? Let us know, Pacific or what have you. So purchase price, there's no financing. They're going to bring cash at closing, $99,000. The earnest money is going to be in the form of bankable funds made out to Heritage Title. They're going to close it for us. Again, all of this is typically the same. If there was an appraisal, even though it's a cash transaction, if the buyer wants to have an appraisal, but we're not making it a condition of the contract, it would be paid for by the buyer. Again, property disclosure, we want all of that. And then from there, the due diligence, occupancy, we need to know if they could please give us the lot lease park information, anything else that is applicable to this particular modular home in this neighborhood, that would be great. We do not, or we do acknowledge the receipt of the seller's property disclosure or the source of water addendum. So we're going to say that, yes, we've gotten that. Maybe it was in the documents that were uploaded already on our MLS information. Then from there, closing documents and the closing date, or the hour and place of closing will be designated by, and I want this to be the listing agent. So I want you to say it's by the listing agent, Amber Huber, Radius agent. I don't want to see in there that it's, to be agreed upon by buying agent and selling agent or listing agent. We've got to have somebody definitive, because things are great when things are great, but they're not when we have a discrepancy. So let's make sure there's only one person that's making that definitive answer as to where we're having the closing and what time we're having the closing. Obviously, we want to work with the other agent and see what's right, what works best for their clients and for our clients. But this way, we have one person that's designating that. Again, closing costs and fees, 1/2 by buyer, 1/2 by seller. We're going to say that the lot owner's status letter must be paid by the seller. I want to know that everything has been paid up to the date of closing on this particular modular home and the lot rent, lease, and what have you, just as if we had homeowners dues in another neighborhood. I want to know that it's been taken care of. So I'm going to ask the seller to please provide that prior to closing. Again, the buyer then will pay for any utility transfer fees, because I feel like the onus is on the buyer for that. They're the ones that are going to get the benefit after closing of having those utilities in their name. Sales use tax, we're not going to have anything in there. No personal property is being transferred. Prorations, again, the same as a buy-sell residential contract. Most recent mill levy, most recent assessed valuation. Other prorations, I'm going to say there's no other prorations on here. Possession, again, I put in here $180 a day. My folks have to go get a hotel room or something somewhere because we haven't closed. Doesn't matter the price of the property they're buying. It's still going to cost them that amount of money to go stay somewhere else. So I put that in there as a standard number that I typically put in. Let's see. This is that the buyer will occupy the property unless they check this box that would say that they will not be occupying the property. Again, computation of period of days, same as before, that it will be extended. The rest of this talks about the loss insurance, damage inclusions and services, and we can go through that too at another date. If somebody has questions specific, please let me know. The walkthrough and verification of condition. We did not discuss this last week, so I'm going to kind of touch on that here today. Again, this reads, buyer, upon reasonable notice, has the right to walk through the home prior to closing to verify that the physical condition of the home and inclusions complies with this contract. Typically, that's the night before, the day before, or even the morning of. But what you want to do is go ahead and still coordinate that through the listing agent. The buyer's agent would go ahead and call and or set it up on, for example, showing time and say, hey, we're going to come over Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. since our closing is at 10. We're just going to walk through the property, make sure everything's okay. This way you can go through and take a look. If there is a discrepancy, that's really good to know so that you can get it taken care of prior to closing. Things that have happened before is, unfortunately, sometimes people will go in and they'll take out light fixtures that were supposed to have been left. Again, it may be a little snafu on the seller's end. They're like, oh, but are you kidding me? That was my grandmother's chandelier and I was not going to leave that. And yet you go, yeah, but that's part of why the buyers bought it. So then you have to go back to a negotiation stance before you step into closing. And believe it or not, things like that happen. And that's why, again, we just need to be very aware of what we're doing. If we see anything out of the ordinary like that, that might make a major issue coming up as you're walking into the closing room, that we get it taken care of. If it's just standard light fixtures, which again, unfortunately, years ago, we saw when there were lots of foreclosed properties, people would go in and they would remove all of those. And then it was a major issue because now we are not buying what we walked through the condition. And it would need to be, all the inclusions would be what it was on the date of closing when we walked through it. So if it's a 1970s home, then we would still expect to have the 1970s light fixtures unless they had been changed out prior to the contract. Again, little tangent there, but information that we just need to know and keep in mind. And I'm thinking of specific situations where it has happened. So again, the additional provisions, if there's anything else in there that we need to know, we would put that in there. Other documents, seller's property disclosure, square footage disclosure. We would have our buyers sell it or sign it here. If we do have their information and they want us to have the information on the contract, we would go ahead and put that in here. Some of our clients sometimes do not want their information all over these contracts. So keep that in mind as well. Buyer's signature, then from there, the seller's signature. Again, down here, broker acknowledges compensation. And again, this is that we do not acknowledge the receipt of the earnest money. And this is where I'm going to show you under the broker acknowledgement and compensation disclosure, where this particular contract, I'm showing that I'm double siding it, that I have the listing for my seller and I was a seller's agent, and I have this buyer agency agreement with my buyer. So I'm the agent on both sides of this. And so here is where I'm saying that broker is working with the buyer as a transaction broker, and that this is a change of status. Right here's my notification to my buyer. I'm no longer, and hopefully I have given them the information prior to us even looking at the property, that I am the selling, or I'm the listing broker. I originally was working as a seller's agent, seller's agency with the seller, but since I have a buyer agency agreement with my buyer, I can still go in and show them that property, that I would change my status to transaction broker. So, but this is the actual formalized change of status where I check this box here. I'm a transaction broker. I'm going to go ahead and sign that here as the broker. And then again, too, the other part of it here is the broker's acknowledgement compensation disclosure. This is to be completed by the broker working with the seller. So again, no, I don't have the earnest money yet. And again, here it says, broker is working with the seller I was originally a seller's agent, but now I'm going to be working as a transaction broker in this transaction. And that, yes, this is a change of status. Again, I would sign it here, date it, and then I can send it off and ask my my clients to sign, my buyers and my seller. So keep in mind that I'm seeing a lot of these contracts come over, even uploaded into SkySlope, and we don't have the agent's signatures. So remember that I know you're all excited, like, yay, I'm writing a contract to buy and sell. Make sure you have that signed. So just good practice. What I do is I actually send the contract to myself first as the first signer on the contract. So I can see certain things, like I think there were a couple things in here that I forgot to check. I can be like, oh, I'm not going to sign that now. I've taken another look at it. I'm going to go back and edit it. I'm going to resend it to myself. Now I'm good. I've got it. I'm going to go ahead and sign it. And then I can send it off to my clients and then have it, after my clients sign it, have it sent automatically to the other agent for their client signature and the other agent's signature as well. And make sure we have that too, because sometimes we'll get it back, and especially on a counter offer, we won't have the other agent's signature on the contract. And then I have to send you a little love note and say, oh, by the way, would you mind, before we get to closing, get the other agent's signature for me, please? Thanks so much. Again, it's not a reprimand against you. It's just, hey, the Real Estate Commission likes to see signatures where there are signature lines. They don't typically like